We often frame money laundering as a crime of stealth and secrecy, a complex game played between criminals and compliance officers. We talk about techniques, red flags, and bank fines. But this perspective misses the profound and devastating truth. Money laundering is not an isolated act of financial deception. It is a powerful, corrosive economic force. It is a parasite that attaches itself to the heart of the global economic system, sucking away vitality, distorting markets, and weakening the very foundations of healthy societies. To see it only as a breach of banking rules is to fundamentally misunderstand its true cost. Today, we're zooming out from the transaction logs and shell company charts to look at the macroeconomic dashboard. We're going to trace how the flood of dirty money doesn't just clean criminal profits, it warps entire economies, inflates the cost of living for ordinary people, hollows out state institutions, and tilts the playing field against honest businesses. This is the story of how illicit finance becomes a direct driver of inequality, instability, and injustice on a global scale. It explains why the fight against money laundering is, in fact, a fight for economic fairness and democratic resilience. The most visible and visceral impact for many people is the distortion of critical asset markets, with real estate being the prime example. When billions in illicit funds seek a safe, stable, and appreciating asset, they flood into prime real estate markets in global cities like London, Vancouver, New York, and Sydney. This isn't normal demand. This is demand disconnected from the fundamentals of local income and employment. It's capital flight and wealth preservation masquerading as investment. The result is severe price inflation. Housing becomes unattainable for the local middle class, leading to generational inequity and social tension. But it goes beyond just high prices. It creates market dysfunction. All cash, anonymous purchases by shell companies bypass normal financing channels and due diligence, making markets opaque and volatile. It leads to the phenomenon of ghost homes, luxury properties left empty as pure vaults for storing value, which deadens neighborhoods and reduces local economic activity from residents. This distortion isn't limited to housing. Dirty money pours into art, classic cars, luxury goods, and even high-end financial instruments, inflating bubbles in these asset classes and creating a two-tier economy where essential assets become speculative playthings for illicit wealth. This market distortion bleeds directly into the second major impact, the undermining of fair competition and the creation of a corrupted private sector. Imagine you're a legitimate small business owner running a construction company. You bid for a contract, calculating your costs and a fair profit margin. But you're competing against a rival company that is a front for organized crime. This rival company doesn't need to make a profit. Its purpose is to launder money. It can submit a bid far below cost, win the contract, and then use the project to legitimize illicit cash through fake invoices for materials and phantom employees. You, the honest business, lose. This is how money laundering fosters zombie businesses, entities that are economically inviable but kept alive by a constant infusion of criminal capital. They crowd out legitimate firms, depress wages by not competing for labor fairly, and poison entire industries. On a larger scale, when kleptocrats or corrupt networks launder the proceeds of embezzled state funds, they often invest in or take over legitimate sectors of their home country's economies, from mining to media. This is state capture turned into market capture, stifling entrepreneurship, innovation, and healthy capitalist competition. The playing field isn't just tilted, it's shattered. The third catastrophic effect is the massive erosion of the public tax base. Money laundering is inextricably linked to tax evasion. The offshore structures, the hidden beneficial owners, the mispriced trade invoices, they all serve to hide wealth and income from tax authorities. The Tax Justice Network estimates that countries lose over $400 billion annually to tax avoidance and evasion facilitated by global financial secrecy. This isn't just about wealthy individuals avoiding their fair share. This is about governments, particularly in developing nations, being starved of the revenue needed to build infrastructure, fund schools, staff hospitals, and provide social safety nets. When a mining conglomerate uses transfer pricing to shift profits to a zero-tax shell company, the African nation where the minerals are extracted loses vital royalty and corporate tax income. This revenue loss has a direct human cost: fewer teachers, crumbling roads, under-equipped clinics. It perpetuates poverty and forces countries into debt, making them more vulnerable to the very predatory lenders and corrupt officials who benefit from the system. Money laundering doesn't just steal from the state, it steals from every citizen who relies on public services. This leads us to the fourth and perhaps most insidious impact: the deepening of corruption and the undermining of governance and democracy. Illicit financial flows are both the fuel and the reward for grand corruption. A corrupt official embezzles public funds, then needs to launder them. The existence of a global secrecy system enables that laundering. But the relationship is symbiotic. The laundered wealth is then often reinvested to gain political influence, funding campaigns, bribing officials, or buying media outlets to shape public opinion. This creates a self-perpetuating cycle. Corruption generates dirty money, which is laundered and recycled to entrench corrupt power, which then enables more corruption. This is known as kleptocracy. The economic impact here is profound. It diverts public investment away from productive projects and into the pockets of the elite. It scares away legitimate foreign direct investment, as no ethical corporation wants to operate in a system where bribes are mandatory and the rule of law is a fiction. It destroys trust in public institutions. When citizens see that the connected and corrupt can steal with impunity and hide their wealth overseas, social contract breaks down, leading to political instability and conflict. The economic cost of this lost trust and instability is incalculable. Finally, all of these factors combine into a pervasive increase in the systemic cost of doing business for everyone. Banks and other financial institutions spend hundreds of billions annually on AML compliance costs that are ultimately passed on to consumers in the form of higher fees and more cumbersome processes. Businesses face increased due diligence costs and regulatory burdens for countries. The cost includes establishing and funding financial intelligence units, law enforcement task forces, and judicial systems to combat these crimes. Furthermore, the presence of large-scale money laundering increases country risk premiums. It makes a nation's financial system look unstable and opaque, leading to higher interest rates on sovereign debt and increased costs for legitimate domestic businesses trying to access international capital. In essence, the entire global financial system becomes less efficient, more expensive, and riskier because of the constant need to defend against the pollution of illicit finance. It's a massive, hidden tax on legitimacy. In conclusion, the economic impact of money laundering is not a side effect, it is the main effect. It is a direct assault on the core principles of a healthy market economy: fair competition, transparent pricing, equitable taxation, and the rule of law. It transfers wealth from the productive many to the predatory few. It turns public resources into private gains and vital social infrastructure into crumbling symbols of state failure. From the inflated rent check of a young professional in a global city to the underfunded classroom in a resource-rich developing nation, the tentacles of laundered money reach deep into everyday economic life.